Joining us this morning live with his weekly take on all political news from all levels of government is CTV's political commentator Scott Reid. Not in studio today, but there is Scott joining us virtually from his home. Scott, good morning.
I'm virtually here, virtually connected.
We feel very connected.
Okay. Good morning, Scott. So Prime Minister Carney and Ukrainian President Zelensky talk as world leaders are preparing for the Trump-Putin summit on the Ukraine war. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I wanted to highlight this because I think it's a reminder of what a delicate moment we are in when an independent sovereign nation like Canada, when you would think is able to conduct its foreign policy on the world stage, free of any consideration other than what do we think? What do we wish to express? Where do we want to place our voice? And yet you see in the statement jointly released between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Carney yesterday, this specter of Trump hovers over all. We've got our trade dispute. And you see the delicacy with which Prime Minister Carney selects his language. So it begins this statement with praise for President Trump for his leadership in bringing together Zelensky and Trump for this summit. Like or at least bringing, Putin together and sort of heading up the summit. So it begins with that because, of course, everything must begin with tribute to the great one, right? So we begin with tribute to Trump. But then even on this controversial issue where Trump has already speculated, from a distance, well, there's going to have to be some land swapping, meaning that, sorry, Ukraine, we're just going to give some of your land to Russia after they illegally invaded you and just stole your property and killed some of your people. You see how this is being navigated. So, the Prime Minister's statement talks about the fact that we must ensure that that there can be no force used to alter international borders, all of which is being coded language delicate so that Canada strikes its own position, but tries to do so without incurring the wrath of Donald Trump for fear that he might turn around and say, I didn't like what you had to say about my leadership on the Ukrainian-Russian summit, therefore I will take it out on you in higher tariffs, because we've seen him use his office in this vindictive way in recent months. And so it just highlights how challenging it is as we deal with this trade dispute and how it colors almost every action and word that the Prime Minister must utter, even when it's not directly related to trade. Yeah, the Trump tentacles just sort of reach into so much, Scott, that is for sure. Not sure how much we can talk about Trump in this, but, we were talking about this yesterday. Housing starts in this province well below the expectations. The Ford government's calculation also, for new home starts includes long-term care beds. That kind of stuck out to me. Like, I suppose people live in them, but it's not really a home. Mm-hmm. Right. And remember, the pledge is 1.5 million new homes in Ontario by 2031. We should be building homes at a clip of about 150,000 a year right now. And we're maybe at 90,000. And that is, as you say, when, the government is now adding things like student beds, for residences. They're adding in long-term care beds. I mean, comfortable park benches, I guess, will be next. And, I say that sort of, cynically, but this same problem affects every layer of government, and we're going to see it in other levels. Prime Minister Carney has talked about the need to increase home construction across Canada by 500,000 a year. Well, these numbers yesterday highlight, how are we getting there? How on earth are we going to get there? The risks for developers remain high. The incentives are insufficient. And so you end up in this challenge where prime ministers and premiers are making these promises, mayors, we're going to build this many houses, we're going to do it. You set it off, 6, 7, 8 years down the road. Well, we're nowhere near to being on track. Condos in the city of Toronto, we're in a crisis. They're going down like a three-legged mountain goat. And so, you have to think to yourself, where are we going to find the incentives to bring builders in to make certain that we actually get construction moving? Because right now the market does not dictate a bunch of building. People are scared. They're pulling back. And that does relate to Trump in part, Nick, because all the disruption of supply chains, all the question marks over how much is lumber going to cost, how much of material is going to cost, a lot of that does actually originate with all these trade disputes in the border and Trump.
Yeah, it certainly does. And, we touched on the numbers yesterday. I think that we're at like some 90,000 or something, but the goal is 30,000 shy. Yeah, sure. 30,000 shy of it. Now I've got the image of a three-legged mountain goat in my head, Scott. Turning to municipal stuff, though, we talked about emergency response call times. They did go down from 90 seconds to now 28, but the goal is 15 seconds. And City of Toronto now hiring more 911 operators to reduce wait times and new cops and resources as well to kind of meet their goal.
Hey, are you guys listening hard? Can you hear that? That's the sound of a municipal election, a mayor's election next year.
Yeah.
I thought this was an interesting news conference. Listen, if you'd seen a reduction of whatever, 64, 69%, something like that in wait times, given the negative news, there's been a few specific negative stories of long waits. More power to the mayor for getting out with law enforcement and saying, listen, we've actually seen an overall effort on this. We've seen a reduction in wait times, not where they'd like to be, but coming down. Okay, great. Going to hire more cops, going to hire more 911 operators. All I would say is, in the run up to an election year, it is no mistake that this former NDP mayor is now talking about crime and putting cops on the streets, putting operators on the phone and trying to deal with it. She knows that in next year's mayor's election, crime and response times and the overall safety and security that people feel in the city is going to be a primary issue. And she's moving now to try to insulate herself on that. And that ain't stupid.
Okay. Appreciate all that, Scott. Scott Reid, virtually this morning. Hopefully we'll see you back here in studio sometime soon. Have a great day.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, guys.